What's going on, guys? It's Danny from Fantasy Stock Exchange here, bringing you another installment of my weekly waiver wire series I run here over at the Fantasy Stock Exchange YouTube channel, where I basically go in depth, kind of recap what happened in week 9, top priority options for you guys on your waiver wire heading into week 10. I mean, we're buckling down, ready for playoff time, boys and girls. Hustle in, strap those seatbelts, get ready, because it is going to be a bumpy ride. Whether it's a 4-team playoff series or 4-team playoffs for your league or 6-team, it is going to be an absolute dogfight to try to get into that spot. But yeah, just recapping an overall week in football. I mean, a ton of nice, exciting action going on in week 9. For the record, if you were streaming the quarterback position, you would know my number one waiver wire quarterback from last week absolutely balled the fuck up to the tune of 29.22 points, as I'm going to mention, because he's on this installment yet again. But yeah, just an exciting week in action. I'm really excited overall to be able to bring these waiver wires to you to ultimately get you guys where you need to be in your fantasy football leagues. But yeah, before I do that, though, good intro. Okay, so as I mentioned, yeah, we're buckling down. We're ready. So I am going to lay forth to you my top waiver wire options for this week. I'm going to start off at the quarterback position. So my top overall waiver wire pickup at the quarterback position is going to be Tua Tagovailoa, quarterback from the Miami Dolphins. I mean, this exciting rookie from Alabama, one of my favorite prospects going into the year, just balled the fuck out against a really good team in the Arizona Cardinals to the tune of 248 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, and no interceptions in the passing game. Also contributing 7 carries for 35 rushing yards as well, accumulating 21.42 fantasy points in default 4-point quarterback league. So his week 10 matchup, he's actually going to be facing off against a fellow rookie quarterback, and that's going to be Justin Herbert from the LA Chargers. Now, if you're actually talking about the LA Chargers, they give up the 4th most points to the quarterback position on the year. I mean, overall, we already know the success of his counterpart in Herbert, which is going to be on Sunday, as well as Joe Burrow, the first overall pick in this year's draft. And frankly, Tua is just hungry. He's really ready to prove what about me. He had that what about me performance against the Arizona Cardinals. Well, he is absolutely ready to lay it on the line and continue performing from here on out. So again, as I mentioned, he absolutely torched a very good Cardinals team, a team going into that game that was 5-2 at home. He went on the road and just said, well, you know what? Sucks to suck, I guess. Torched 2 years ago's number 1 overall pick in Kyler Murray, who's in the midst of a top 5 overall MVP campaign this year in his own right. I mean, it was just a fantastic, exciting showing from a good young quarterback. And he's just a guy I want on my teams. To me, he's a high upside quarterback to rest of the season. And again, in this week against the Chargers, a team that's giving up 4th most points to the position, I do think he, at minimum, can give you top 15 overall value and what I expect to be a very good showing against those Chargers. So if you're talking about FAAB potential, again, because it's a quarterback position, because we're assuming it's a 1-quarterback league you guys are operating in. Now, if it's a super flex, he's just not going to be available. If he is available in a super flex, that's all your FAAB, and you don't think twice about it. In a 1-quarterback league, though, we're going to be talking about around $5, considering that there's such a plethora of options at this position, different from another position I'm going to mention later on. But yeah, I definitely feel comfortable bidding $5 in Tua and ultimately believing that he can give you really good high upside quarterback 2 value the rest of the season. So big ups to Tua Tagovailoa. Very good, very needed performance for him to ultimately show why he was the 5th overall pick in the draft by the Miami Dolphins. Talking about my second option, it's going to be the guy I was kind of alluding to in the intro, and that's going to be Drew Lock, quarterback from the Denver Broncos, currently at 20% ownership in Yahoo leagues. By the way, if I didn't mention, Tua Tagovailoa is only owned in 24% of the Yahoo leagues. So yeah, Drew Lock, 20% of leagues. Just looking over his week 9 stat line, as I kind of mentioned, 313 passing yards, 2 passing touchdowns, and 1 interception, and also contributed on the ground to the tune of 7 carries for 47 rushing yards and a touchdown. 29.22 points in default 4-point quarterback leagues or 4-point touchdown leagues. Just an awesome performance, an awesome showing from the young option for the Denver Broncos. Mention it though. His week 10 matchup is almost as good. I mentioned that the Atlanta Falcons are giving up the most points to the quarterback position on the year. Well, I mean, Las Vegas is not far off. They're giving up the 6th most points to the quarterback position and had just given up an absolute barn burner of a performance from Justin Herbert. So, again, while he was my number 1 last week, fell off a little bit. He's number 2 now, and that's only because of how good Tua Tagovailoa looked. But he's still an option I am really intrigued by starting and streaming overall in this matchup. So, if you're talking about it, I mean, I just think he's going to give you another top 15 type week. He's hot. The Broncos are looking good on offense. I mean, if you're looking at the overall pieces, the overall weapons that the Broncos are actually possessing on the offensive end, those young, talented receivers and tight end are really performing thus far. I mean, Jerry Jeudy, a 14-target game, really produced 7 for 125 and a touchdown in that game. You guys all saw that little fake go where he stuck his hand up and then just absolutely hit the comeback right in the corner's face. 10 yards of separation. We also see, I mean, Noah Fant's just a nice, good, consistent young option for Drew Lock as well. Tim Patrick has looked solid, and I mean KJ Hamler is an absolute speedster on the outside currently that had 10 targets in this game. So overall, I think due to his weapons, due to the overall weakness of the defense, I do think he can give you another top 15 type week. Now, if you're talking about FAAB potential, I would say around $2 for him. While I think Tua Tagovailoa, the reason why he's at 5 is because I think he can be high-end quarterback 2 for you for the rest of the season. I do still view Drew Lock into the streamer type mind frame, if you will. So $2. I mean, if you know your league mates, you know people are going to be willing to bid more. I wouldn't mind bidding up to 3, 4, maybe even 5 if you absolutely need him this week. But I definitely feel like he can give you a really solid streamable quarterback week off the waiver wire this week. So absolutely love Drew Lock as well. The honorable mentions at this position. I'm going to start off with Teddy Bridgewater, quarterback from the Carolina Panthers. The reason why he's not listed here, again, like he's been looking really well. He's been balling the fuck out recently, but he's still playing against a good Tampa Bay Buccaneers pass defense who only give up the 6th least points to the quarterback position thus far. I know they got shredded by Drew Brees and the Saints on Sunday Night Football. Let's stop reminding Bush in the comments, but I do think that Teddy Bridgewater ultimately can give you good value pass this week. The reason why he's not in the top 2 is because he has ultimately a bad matchup this week. Talk about Nick Foles, quarterback Chicago Bears, 10% going up against the Minnesota Vikings. Derek Carr, quarterback Las Vegas at 42%. And then Baker Mayfield, quarterback Cleveland Browns at 33% ownership. So definitely a bunch of solid options at the position this week. But my 2 main targets, if I am in dire need of a streamable quarterback this week, are going to be Tua Tagovailoa and Drew Lock. Talking about the RB position, going to move into that next. As I always say, the meat and potatoes of fantasy football, a very scarce position for usable assets in general. So I'm going to start off with the option I believe to have a high floor. I'm going to talk about my second guy as having the high ceiling down the stretch. So the high floor guy, I'm going to mention this guy's been getting a ton of work in his offense with the absence of Mark Ingram. Going to be mentioning Gus Edwards, running back from the Baltimore Ravens, currently at 37% ownership in Yahoo League. So if you're glossing over his week 9 stat line, 11 rushes, 23 yards, and 2 targets. Not too bad. He turned those 2 targets into 2 receptions, 11 yards. Did have a fumble, but did pound a rushing touchdown in at the end of the game. So to me here, he's seen a solid workload in Ingram's absence. He's actually gotten 13 plus touches in those 3 games. And I mean, he has the goal line role on what should be a good offense week to week. 3 rushing touchdowns in the last 3 games. So 1 per game. And to me, he's just going to be a capable high volume, high floor type RB3 for the time being in a position scarce of usable options. Again, his matchup against New England, he's facing off against a team where if you expect it week to week or year to year, New England should have a good overall defense, but they've actually been susceptible to giving up points to the running back position thus far this year. They've given up the 9th most points to the running back position on the year. We'll see what they do against the Jets today, but whatever. Even if they do well against the Jets, I don't really expect that to change much because the Jets are the Jets. But if you're talking about Edwards, I mean, he's looked good. He's looked efficient. He's looked talented and ultimately filling in for that role filling in for that role in the absence of Mark Ingram. He's looked much better this year, much fresher than Mark Ingram even did when he was in the lineup. Now, I understand J.K. Dobbins is the guy to own in this backfield. He is not going to meet the thresholds of this video where you have to be owned in less than 50% of leagues. But if J.K. Dobbins is available on your wire, you spend every single every single buck of your FAAB and you don't think twice about it. But I also do think that Gus Edwards operating as the number 2 running back in the offense could definitely give you some good value. Again, we're seeing the split right now at J.K. Dobbins at approximately 62% of snaps. Gus Edwards filling at around the 35% snap mark. So on 35% snaps, getting a good amount of rushing opportunities and goal line carries, 15 FAAB bucks should definitely be able to get it done, especially if you need a flex-worthy option as soon as this week. He should figure himself into that high-end RB3 range for me for the short-term future, in my opinion. Talking about the long-term future, this next guy is the guy I think can make a huge impact for you down the stretch if he gets the workload necessary to do so, and that's going to be Cam Akers, running back from the Los Angeles Rams, currently at 30% ownership in Yahoo League. So talking about his Week 9 stats, there weren't any to really base off of because the Los Angeles Rams had their bye week. But talking about their Week 10 matchup against Seattle, Seattle gives up the 17th most points to the position. So not really a plus matchup, but not a negative either. They're basically league average. League average would be 16. They're at 17. So, yeah, whatever. I'm not really focused on the matchup itself here because, again, as I mentioned, I do think Cam Akers is more of a long-term type play. So, again, before the bye, had his 10 touches. He looked good. He looked talented. He looked really efficient on those 10 touches, that he had prior to that bye week. I mean, that Henderson injury, that Darrell Henderson thigh injury could definitely yield more work towards Cam Akers, who, in my opinion, these past 2 weeks has definitely looked like the Rams' overall best, most talented running back. And if he's able to secure the starting job or even a good, healthy amount of touches in a game, like if he can get to that 12 to 15 touch area, I can definitely feel like he can give you similar to what DeAndre Swift has been able to do for the Lions. I mean, DeAndre Swift has really developed himself into a mid to low end RB2 thus far. I think if Cam Akers gets even that amount of touches per game, he can definitely supplement that type of value. So in a position, dearth of options. I mean, there are absolutely no options available for you in terms of the running back position, given the amount of injuries we've seen, given the amount of the busts we've seen. I mean, it's just an absolute mess of a position. So if you're talking about options, I mean, I would definitely feel comfortable bidding up to 15, 20 bucks of FAAB on Cam Akers, especially if you can get him as like your RB4. I mean, that's probably where his value is going to be. I do think he can give low-end RB2 type upside if he's able to develop that role. And if he gets a bell cow, quote-unquote, role, similar to what we were seeing from Darrell Henderson early in the season, I mean, this guy could be an absolute league winner, kind of what we mentioned with J.K. Dobbins down the stretch. I absolutely love Cam Akers, the talent, the opportunity, one of the most rush-heavy teams in the league in the Los Angeles Rams. Everything is there for this guy to succeed. This is just a stash play in its finest, especially if you are already looking at a playoff spot. This guy can really give you a competitive edge down the stretch. So again, I mentioned 15 to 20 bucks should be able to get it done here. Honorable mentions at the position. I'm going to mention Duke Johnson, running back from the Houston Texans, 16% ownership. Again, David Johnson did suffer that concussion, so it's definitely something to stay tuned with. But if David Johnson were to miss any time, Duke Johnson can absolutely give you a ton of value, especially in full PPR, half PPR type leagues. This guy, in the absence of David Johnson, was able to produce over 16 touches, had a touchdown. I mean, he looked decent. He looked okay. And David Johnson proves that the running back in this offense, the main running back in this offense is going to get a ton of touches. So if David Johnson's ruled out, I would definitely be intrigued by Duke Johnson, even giving you low-end RB2 type numbers. Talk about Tony Pollard, running back from Dallas, 34% ownership. Again, Zeke really hasn't looked like himself this year. He's kind of looked like a David Montgomery type. Tony Pollard's been the more efficient back. I'm curious to see the usage down the stretch, or even if they shut down Zeke at all this year, because the Cowboys are completely out of contention, in my opinion. I mean, I get it. They're in the midst of the division, but realistically, you're turning over to your fourth quarterback on the year. You lost your entire offensive line. Pollard has looked good. He's a young, talented fourth-round pick from a couple years ago. You want to see what you get with him. Definitely an intriguing option, especially in PPR leagues. I do think he can be a decent stash for you. Not going to be expensive whatsoever. Maybe you bid a couple bucks on him in a super deep league. He can definitely return value for that price. J.D. McKissic, running back from Washington at 24%. Again, 9 catches in that game, especially when Alex Smith was able to come into the game. I don't expect that on a week-to-week basis, but in PPR leagues in particular, operating behind Antonio Gibson, I definitely can see him actually appealing some good flex value down the stretch. Josh Kelly and Kalen Balazs, running backs for the Los Angeles Chargers, at 42% and 1% ownership. Definitely monitor the status of Justin Jackson. Left the game with a knee injury. If Justin Jackson is set to miss time out of these two options, I mean, it's anybody's pick who's realistically going to get the bigger role. I'd probably say at this point it's going to be Josh Kelly, but I'm not 100% sure on that. I do think either way, they're definitely worth low-end type bids if Justin Jackson were to miss any time. And then finally, Ryan Nall, running back from Chicago, at 0%. Again, this has to do with the injury to David Montgomery. Let's be honest, though. The upside isn't really there for him, in my opinion, because David Montgomery as himself was a volume-dependent low-end RB2, and Ryan Nall is a significantly worse player than David Montgomery. So realistically, this should be a similar situation to what we're seeing from like Wayne Gallman for the Giants, what Devontae Freeman was for them before that. Definitely not a high upside type pickup in Ryan Nall, but if you're in a pinch, you can get this guy for super cheap. You're in a super deep league, maybe even a dynasty league, you can plug him into a flex given buys. I can definitely see him giving value in that type of situation. So definitely a good plethora of running backs to pick up, but the main two, obviously, as I mentioned, I like Gus Edwards for the short term at $15, and then Cam Akers in the long term at $15, even $20, depending on what your league is. Going into the next position, I'm going to be talking about the wide receivers, and there is absolutely one main option that I need to get everywhere. And if he's available in your league, go pick him up. Go spend that FAAB. Go spend that money, dollar bills, y'all on this guy. And that's Jalen Reagor, wide receiver from the Philadelphia Eagles. Currently at 24% ownership in Yahoo leagues, guys. This is just unacceptable. How is this guy owned in less than 25% of leagues? I mean, he is just such a dynamic talent, but we'll get into that. Glossing over stats, obviously, he didn't have any in week 9. They had a bye week. Week 10, again, matchup against the New York Giants. They give up the 9th most points to the wide receiver position. And as we're expecting, I'm assuming James Bradberry should be shadowing against Travis Fulgham. I can double check that going into the week. Again, PFF should have that up soon. But if Travis Fulgham is getting shadowed by James Bradberry, I mean, there's just so much opportunity for Jalen Reagor to ooze his talent all over the field. If you're talking about it, I mean, let's give you a little backstory on what Jalen Reagor is if you don't know about him already. I mean, this is a talented first-round rookie receiver on a depleted team of quality weapons in the Philadelphia Eagles. I mean, if you guys want to know my thoughts on Jalen Reagor, the talent, I wrote them up for our draft guide. They should still be up on the site, their draft profiles. Make sure you go check out our website at thefantasystockexchange.com. But this is a legitimate top 25 overall player in this past draft. Obviously, we haven't really been able to see him explode onto the scene because of injuries. Again, we already know CeeDee Lamb. We know Justin Jefferson. We know Jerry Jeudy because they've been performing in recent weeks. We haven't really got to see the exposure of Jalen Reagor, also T. Higgins in that group, the exposure of Jalen Reagor because he's been hurt, okay? But let me give you a glimpse of how good he is and how utilized he was, even in week 1, in his first week, coming off of injury. He had a 24% target market share in his first game back from injury in a game where Carson Wentz and the Eagles offense were absolutely struggling against my Dallas Cowboys to really move the ball. I mean, their offense put up 16 total points. I do think that's going to bounce back, especially in a game against the New York Giants. I do think they're going to bounce back. Carson Wentz is going to look better. And if that's the case, I mean, 6 targets and a 24% market share in his first game back where he produced a touchdown, had 3 catches, 16 yards. I mean, the sky is the limit for Jalen Reagor operating as the 1B behind Travis Fulgham, in my opinion. He looked good. He looked efficient. He's looked like the player that we expected him to be coming out of TCU. I mean, you turn on the tape of this guy. He's so explosive. But overall, yeah, I love Jalen Reagor. And if you have to put your FAAB bid on him, again, you shouldn't have a lot left of your FAAB budget in general, but $30, $35, stash him at the end of your bench. He could have wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 type upside down the stretch and ultimately be a league winner for you. I absolutely love the potential upside of Jalen Reagor. So, man, I can't say enough good things about him. Again, if you made it this far in the video, you've enjoyed what you've seen so far, you enjoyed the waiver wires I kind of pointed out to you guys, make sure you leave a like. It really helps the channel grow. Again, we are nearing 2.1 thousand subscribers on the channel. Comment down below who your favorite waiver wire pickup is of the week. Do you like Jalen Reagor? Cam Akers, Gus Edwards, or one of the quarterbacks. Make sure you go leave that down below, who you need the most, who you're hoping to get the most with your FAAB bid. And if you're new to the channel, go hit that subscribe button. Again, we are gearing down. We are grinding over here at the Fantasy Stock Exchange. Video every day, 3 live streams a week. Make sure you go hit that support. Appreciate all of you who have done so thus far. But let's get back to the video. We're going to be talking about the top tight ends of the week. And, actually, let me mention some honorable mention receivers before we do that. Forgot to do that for you guys. Going to mention Michael Pittman Jr., wide receiver from the Indianapolis Colts at 7% ownership, came back on Sunday to the tune of 4 catches, 56 yards, looked really good, really efficient in his first game back. Definitely someone to monitor down the stretch. We're going to be talking about Darnell Mooney, wide receiver from the Chicago Bears, 14% ownership, came back, 5 catches, 43 yards. He's looked absolutely dynamic, absolutely efficient, operating as the wide receiver 2 behind Allen Robinson. Had 11 targets where, frankly, he was just absolutely missed by Nick Foles down the field. This is an absolutely talented late-round pick that has absolutely exploded onto the scene. I mean, this could be a guy we're talking about in sleeper videos going into next year because he is that explosive. The person he's kind of been reminding me of, the way he's been playing, I mean, he's got a little bit of Deontay Johnson to him. I mean, just his absolute separation that he's been getting on routes so far has been incredible. And finally, the other option I'm going to mention is going to be Allen Lazard, wide receiver from the Green Bay Packers at 38% ownership. And he was nearing that top 2 or top 1, really, because there's only Reagor. He was nearing being mentioned in for FAAB. Again, if you're talking about FAAB for him, I'd probably say around 15, 20 bucks. He's coming back. He is the wide receiver 2 when healthy for the Green Bay Packers offense. We already know how good Adams and Aaron Rodgers is. Getting a guy in Lazard back who was looking really good prior to his injury could absolutely help that offense thrive to an even higher degree. So love those guys, but Jalen Reagor is the alpha of this group. Again, mentioning FAAB, 30, 35, maybe even 40 bucks on this guy. I don't care. He is that talented, that explosive of a player. Talking about the tight end position, as I kind of mentioned, going to be talking about Irv Smith Jr., tight end from the Minnesota Vikings, a favorite of the channel, if you will. Currently at 7% ownership in Yahoo leagues. If you're looking at his Week 9 stat line, 4 targets, 2 receptions, 10 yards, and a touchdown. And his Week 10 matchup, he's actually going up Monday Night Football against the Chicago Bears. So I don't really have the rank there, but they're a good defense. I'm not picking up Irv Smith Jr. because of this matchup. I'm picking up Irv Smith Jr. because of the player. Talking about the player, 20% target market share in a game where Cousins only chucked it 20 times. I mean, he had 2 touchdowns on 4 total targets. Insane. 4 targets on 20 overall passing attempts and was able to convert that into 2 touchdowns. This is a playmaker. This is an efficient player in that offense. If you're talking about it, the tight end position, as I mentioned, the quarterback position is abundant with options. The receiver position is abundant with options. The tight end position is absolutely depleted. And in a position, again, where you're lacking consistent week-to-week options, Irv Smith has enough talent, opportunity, and upside to really establish himself down this stretch as a key weapon for a very hot Minnesota Vikings team so far. I mean, he's clearly developed the trust of Kirk Cousins. He's had 4+ targets in 3 of his last 4 games. Again, this is a talented second-year tight end, finally acclimating himself into the offense, really taking the snap share away from Kyle Rudolph. I mean, this is what you look for potential breakouts. And this guy can absolutely be a breakout down the stretch based on the way he's been playing. So in my opinion, he's just such a potential league-winning upside type pickup at this position that in terms of FAAB, I mean, 10 to 15 bucks should absolutely be able to get it done, in my opinion. Talking about the honorable mentions at the position, I'm going to mention Dalton Schultz. He looked really good, really efficient with Garrett Gilbert throwing the ball. The offense didn't look terrible the week before the way it did with Ben DiNucci under center. And I'm going to mention these 2 options. The reason why they're not really in the quote-unquote video and they're only in the honorable mentions is just because I think it's just simple knowledge, common sense that they should have already been owned past 50%. But I'm still going to mention them because they're – Austin Hooper, tight end from the Cleveland Browns, is available in 59% of the leagues. I mean, this is a guy who's had 5+ receptions in the 3 games he played prior to his injury. He should absolutely be rostered in any league format, to be quite honest, given the amount of usage he's received with Odell Beckham going down with injury. He's coming back this week. If he doesn't, obviously the same thing applies for Harrison Bryant. But, man, make sure Austin Hooper is owned. If he's available in your leagues, make sure you go pick him up. Plain and simple, he's going to be a top 15 tight end rest of the season. Very safe floor from a guy in Austin Hooper. And I don't know why I have to mention him, but Jimmy Graham is owned in less than 50% of leagues. This is a top 8 tight end on the year in a position that is absolutely lacking quality standouts on a week-to-week basis. Like, if you're talking about Jimmy Graham, week to week, you see the target share that he's able to develop in his offense. I mean, 3 weeks ago, 5 receptions. This week, 6 receptions. I know he had that little stinker in between against the Saints where he only had 2 receptions for 13 yards. But guys, on a week-to-week basis, you look at his overall targets, okay? Week 1, 7 targets. Week 2, he had a stinker, 1 target. Week 3, 10, 5, 5, 8, 6, 7, 6. Like, that is as consistently involved as they come at the tight end position. To boot with that, he's also had 5 total touchdowns on the year. I mean, again, 51% leagues, he's not owned. If he is not owned in your league, you go this instant and go pick him up because he is a top 10 tight end for the rest of the year, given the usage that the Chicago Bears have shown with him in the offense. So, yeah, that basically highlights the offensive positions in fantasy football for you guys. Going to mention my top 3 defensive streamers of the week. Going to mention the Philadelphia Eagles going on the road against the New York Giants, currently owned in 47% of the leagues. Again, they are still facing against a turnover-prone quarterback in Daniel Jones. I do think they should be able to supplement a very valuable week on the defensive end for you guys. New Orleans going at home against the San Francisco 49ers. We saw what that New Orleans defense was able to do to Tom Brady and co. with the Buccaneers. I do think facing against San Francisco and who should really be without Jimmy Garoppolo once again. We saw what Nick Mullins was able to do against the Packers. Wasn't pretty. I do think the New Orleans Saints could give you a ton of value there in that matchup. And then finally, the Detroit Lions playing at home against the Washington football team. Guys, Alex Smith is starting. He did not look good, unfortunately, last week. All kudos to him. All respects to him. I mean, the fact that he's even playing in football games right now is astonishing, given the severity of the injury that he suffered. But he's just not the same quarterback he used to be, unfortunately. Doesn't have the mobility, doesn't have the accuracy down the field, has looked rusty. This defense should be able to get a ton of turnovers and sacks in this game ultimately. So, yeah, that goes with my Week 10 waivers of the week. Hopefully you guys enjoyed, and make sure you go smash the like button. Anyways, this is your boy Danny. I will see you guys again for the rankings video this week. Signing off. Take care, y'all.